It's always frustrated me that I can't seem to beat procrastination. Like, I hardly know when it's gonna show up and just derail a project. But in reading this book, I think I finally figured out what causes it, and more importantly, what I can do so that it doesn't control me. I'm gonna show you the 3 areas, according to this book, that procrastination comes from. And after that, I'll give you an exercise you can use against each one of those areas. I'll reveal at the end of this video what this book is, but if you figure it out before then, leave a comment and a timestamp. At its most basic level, procrastination is simply inaction. And what most people get wrong is they think procrastination is like this barrier. Like, you're going along and, oh no, procrastination got in my way. Yeah, no. Procrastination is more like a dense fog that clouds you and you can't see through it, you can't get through it, and so you just like hunker down and try to outlast it. So the real question then is, where does procrastination or inaction come from? The first thing that this book says causes procrastination is this: uncertainty. To illustrate this, imagine that you need to make a decision, but you don't know what decision is best. Worse yet, everybody is telling you which decision that you should make based on whatever. In situations like this, we often choose to take no action at all because we fear taking the wrong action. Now contrast that with your creative project or your business or whatever, and social media flooding you with everything that you should do and everybody else's opinions. All of a sudden you have hundreds, if not thousands, of different options or things that you could do. Here's another reason that we procrastinate: fear. When we find ourselves procrastinating, we're often really hard on ourselves. We tell ourselves that we're just being lazy or we're being undisciplined or unmotivated, when really it's usually none of these things. Usually we procrastinate because we're afraid of a potential outcome, even if that outcome is illogical or unreasonable. And this one is so hard to identify, but once you do, there's some very actionable steps you can take that I'll show you here in just a little bit. The third reason we procrastinate, according to this book, is inertia, meaning that it takes more energy to change direction than it does to keep going straight. So if we're scrolling social media, it's easiest to keep scrolling social media, even though we should probably go to bed. But here's the thing: if you can just get started enough to get over that initial hump, you'll have built enough momentum in this new area, in this new decision or direction, that now you'll find it easier to keep going in that area. Hopefully all of this makes sense, because now I'm gonna give you some practices that we can use to remove each of these blockages. Because the way that we beat procrastination is not by force, it's not by being more motivated or disciplined, it's by removing the blockages, which are uncertainty, fear, and inertia. So here's how we do that. The first step in unblocking uncertainty is to get extremely clear on why we're doing what we're doing. Reasons are the fuel for excellence. And if we don't have good reasons, it's much easier to procrastinate. Here's a little exercise that I'll do with you from the book. Okay, so here's what you want to do. You want to grab your list of tasks and ask yourself this question for each task: what's the purpose behind this task? And you can do this too. Go back to a to-do list or a schedule or something that you had and you procrastinated on it, and find the ones that you procrastinated on and ask yourself, what was the purpose behind those? So for example, one of mine was to spend 30 minutes of reading and then have a session of studying Spanish. Neither of those I did. Easily could have done them, but I just didn't. I put them off. So 30 minutes of reading, what's the purpose behind that? The purpose behind that is that if I'm not constantly taking in new ideas and learning, I won't have anything to share with you guys. By not identifying the purpose behind that, all I saw it as was just 30 minutes of reading. And it was like, I have more important things to do. In fact, this is something that Ali Abdaal says that he does every single day. He makes his to-do list or his schedule, and then he goes through and asks, what's the purpose behind this? Why am I doing this? Because we can't just boss ourselves around and expect ourselves to be productive. If you don't get clear answers from this, keep asking it. What's the purpose behind this and this and this? If you do this, one of two things will happen. Either you'll get to the bottom of your intent and find the drive that you're looking for to keep pushing, or you'll get to the bottom and realize that there's a misalignment between your actions and your goals, or your values and your goals. Fear is lessened by perspective and control. Procrastination that comes from fear often looks like this. When we think about the outcome, we exaggerate it and expand it and make it much more big and scary than it probably actually will be, and we need to gain perspective on it. Here's how we shrink the fear to a more realistic expectation. Pretend with me for a second that the outcome that you're afraid of actually happens, even though most of the time it doesn't. Now, if that happens, okay, and you're in the moment experiencing it happening, ask yourself, okay, will that matter in 10 minutes, 10 weeks, or 10 years? Maybe you're procrastinating on leading out in a project because you're afraid that you're gonna do poorly. Maybe you've never done it before. That's a logical fear, right? But if it does go poorly, will that matter in 10 minutes? Yeah, probably. You're probably gonna be a little bit embarrassed. How about 10 weeks later? I mean, probably not. You might still remember it, but most likely by then you've learned from your mistakes. You've done other presentations and projects and you've gotten better. Okay, now what about 10 years? Chances are you're not even gonna remember it. When you have nothing to compare your fear to, it tends to just expand to fill whatever medium that you offer it. The next thing you wanna do is find a way to take control of the process. We often fear the outcome simply because we can't control it. But here's the thing, we can always control the process. Inertia is removed by action. This book quotes Tim Pitchell, a leading researcher on procrastination. By the way, if you haven't figured it out already, this is Feel Good Productivity by Ali Abdaal. Links down in the description if you want to find it. Anyway, the reason Tim Pitchell says he basically never procrastinates is he says he always defines the next action step. So let's do a little thought experiment here. Think about something that you're putting off doing. Big, small, doesn't matter. What aspect of it are you focusing on? Most of the time, we're thinking about the last action step, which is usually the biggest and the hardest. But in doing this, by identifying the next action step, not the last one, the next one, we find that the next step is usually really small. And it's surprising how easy it is to take action when you realize that the next action step is turning your phone off, opening your laptop, or pulling out your exercise equipment. And so by doing this, by constantly creating a framework of action, even if it's a tiny little bit, it always keeps us moving. We're constantly going in this direction. We're constantly creating momentum. I use a version of this every day, and it's called the duration effect. It's a powerful productivity booster, and I cover it in depth in this video. You can watch it here in the middle. It'll give you yet another tool to finally beat procrastination.